Hi, everybody. This is for Thursday. And today, for Thursday, we are going to go back to House on Mango Street. So you're going to need your book. And I've got a couple announcements for this week. I'm going to try to put in grades tomorrow. Today, I'm going to try to grade everything that you added. That was the double entry journal. It's not due until to, it's not due till Wednesday at 5. I changed that date to give you 2 days. So hopefully by Thursday, I'll be putting that grade in the grade book. And that also is going to give you attendance for Tuesday and Wednesday. And then there was also the assignment that was the practice essay that's due by Friday. And that is of the last 2 paragraphs of the invention essay. So you should be finishing that and adding the document. Some people have been emailing me like photos of typed of handwritten paragraphs, but it needs to be a typed document and I should be able to see all 4 paragraphs. So we already did the introduction and the first body paragraph before all this happened. So you were supposed to be finishing the second body paragraph and then writing the conclusion. So it should be a full 4 paragraph essay that you submit. One other thing is you have to watch my videos. I have been going to see the stats on the videos and not everybody's logging in because I have less people and less views than I do students. And secondly, the average view for the videos is like under 4 minutes and the videos have been like 17 to 18 minutes long. So today there's going to be a quiz based on some comments that are in the videos, just a really short Google form. There's also going to be a question that comes from the analogies that you're supposed to do for bell work. And then there's also going to be a secret code word that I'm going to put somewhere in the middle of this lecture that you have to know to be able to address on one of the questions to show that you actually watched the video. Now, yes, I know you could all tell your friends the code word, but I'm trusting that you will not do that. So please be ethical. Watch the videos. Don't tell all your friends and text them the code word just so that they don't have to do the work that you did. Make them do the work. So watch the videos because you're not going to get everything out of this book just by reading it by yourself. Okay, so today we're going to do 3 vignettes. First job, Papa who wakes up tired in the dark, and born bad. So the page numbers are at the top of the notes. And if you can see right here in the document, we're going to have notes for first job in just a minute, and I'll walk you through it. I'll go ahead and read the vignette with you since I think some students like to hear it out loud just because there's a lot of repetition. Again, you can always just fast forward this part, or you can just mute it and then read it silently if you want to until we get to the discussion. So we have 3 vignettes. The first one, the first job, is exactly what you would think it is. Esperanza is going to actually go to work. Now, I know you're thinking, I thought she was my age. Well, she's supposed to be about maybe 13, 14 at this point. Again, we don't really know exactly how old she is in the book, but it does say in the chapter that she lies about her age. So it could be that she's 13 and in 7th or 8th grade, but then you have to be 14 to get a work permit. And she says she is, but she's really not. So it says she lies. So she's under work age. And she gets a job, and we never know at the end of the vignette whether she continues to work there or not. So like any of the other chapters, it's just a one-time snapshot into one day, her first day at a job and what happened. So let's go ahead and read it. It starts on page 53, first job. It wasn't as if I didn't want to work. I did. I had even gone to the Social Security office the month before to get my Social Security number. I needed money. The Catholic high school was going to cost a lot, and Papa said nobody went to public school unless you want to turn out bad. I thought I'd find an easy job, the kind other kids had, working in the dime store or maybe a hot dog stand. And though I hadn't started looking yet, I thought I might the week after next. But when I came home that afternoon, all wet because Tito had pushed me into the open water hydrant, only I sort of let him, Mama called me in the kitchen before I could even go change, and Aunt Lala was sitting there drinking her coffee with a spoon. Aunt Lala said she had found me a job at the Peter Pan Photo Finishers on North Broadway where she worked, and how old was I? And to show up tomorrow saying I was 1 year older, and that was that. So the next morning, I put on a navy blue dress that made me look older and borrowed money for lunch and bus fare because Aunt Lala said I wouldn't get paid till the next Friday. And I went in and saw the boss of the Peter Pan Photo Finishers on North Broadway where Aunt Lala worked, and I lied about my age, like she told me to. And sure enough, I started that same day. In my job, I had to wear white gloves, and I was supposed to match negatives with their prints. Just look at the picture, look for the same one in the negative strip, put it in the envelope, and do the next one. That's all. I didn't know where these envelopes were coming from or where they were going. I just did what I was told. It was really easy. And I guess I wouldn't have minded it, except when you get tired after a while. I didn't know if I could sit down or not. And then I started sitting down only when 2 ladies next to me did. And after a while, they started to laugh and came up to me and said I could sit when I wanted to. And I said I knew. Then lunchtime came, and I was scared to eat alone in the company lunchroom with all those men and ladies looking, so I ate really fast standing up in one of the washroom stalls and had lots of time left over, so I went back to work early. But then break time came, and not knowing where else to go, I went back to the coat room because there was a bench there. I guess it was time for the night shift or middle shift to arrive because a few people came in and punched the time clock, and an older Oriental man said hello, and we talked for a little while about my just starting, and he said we could be friends. And next time to go to the lunchroom and sit with him. I felt better. He had nice eyes, and I didn't feel so nervous anymore. Then he asked if I knew what day it was, and when I said I didn't, he said it was his birthday, and would I please give him a birthday kiss? I thought I would because he was so old, and just as I was about to put my lips to his cheek, he grabbed my face with both hands and kissed me hard on the mouth and doesn't let go. Okay, so this should remind you of another vignette. Remember Bum Man? So we're going to continue with that same motif of the dangers of the adult world. So let's go through some of the bullets here, and I'll add a little bit of a personal story in here as well. Again, the general plot, like I already said, is she does lie and she gets a job. Now, what you might not realize is what a photo finisher is, but this is back like old time, back when I was in high school, when there were not digital cameras. So you actually had those negative strips that look like transparent plastic, and you had to print them in a machine to be able to get the prints made. So she mentions how she runs the machine and she has to match the negatives with the photo paper print and then put them in envelopes, and that's her job. So the vignette has two main motifs: appearance versus reality. Again, the idea that things are not what they seem, and the idea of moving from the child to the adult world. Now, there's obviously a lot of symbolism, and so pay attention because some of these may be the quiz questions that you're going to have in just a minute. And I am going to add on to some things that are not just in the notes. So if people don't listen to the video, they're not going to get all the correct answers. The Peter Pan photo finishers also uses alliteration with pa with the P's. It's also an allusion. So if you remember, the definition of allusion is a reference to another literary text. So you should have picked up on Peter Pan. Now, most of you know like the Disney Peter Pan, which is based on the book. There was a book, Peter Pan, that the Disney movie was made into. But Peter Pan is a literary character who's been around in many stories and film versions, and he did not want to grow up. He always wanted to stay innocent and stay childlike and stay in a land called Never Never Land, where you never grow up. So the idea of the Peter Pan photo finishers is sort of ironic. Esperanza has this child side to her that doesn't or isn't ready to grow up, but yet she's going to a job where she has to grow up. So again, the photo finishers is the place where she grows up, but she wants to really or needs to still really be a child. So there's this idea of foreshadowing that she's going to have to try to leave that Never Never Land by the name Peter Pan. Now, Aunt Lala is a minor character. She's a flat character, static, doesn't really have a lot of personality traits. We never see her again. She's just sort of an impetus in the chapter to be able to get us a job because she's the one that knows about an opportunity for hiring. So she's the one as an adult who tells her to lie about her age. So that's kind of a little unethical. But again, there's also symbolism of the adult world because Esperanza gets ready for the job interview, and the book says on page 54 that I put on the navy blue dress that made me look older. So again, the suggestion of older is that she's trying to look older than she is. That should remind you of the clothing idea of the shoes in the family of Little Feet. They were putting on shoes that made them look older, and that also made them get into danger with Bum Man on the stoop. And so in this vignette, she dresses to look older, lies about her age, and then gets in over her head again to unwanted danger, not knowing it's going to be a problem. Additionally, there's other signs of her innocence. We're right here in the notes. First of all, she does have to lie. If she was actually ready to go into the adult world, she wouldn't be having to exaggerate and lie about her age. So she's trying to go into the adult world too soon. And that might remind you of the jump rope motif of the not too fast, not too slow, not too fast, not too slow that was in Hips. So she's going a little too fast because she's lying about her age. And that automatically kind of indicates danger is going to come. Secondly, she wears white gloves at work. So the actual quote is, "In my job, I had to wear white gloves," page 54. So the white gloves, obviously, we talked about in class that white is often symbolism for innocence or purity. So she actually is very innocent. And in the end of the story, we see that when she's tricked. And then we have, of course, the main conflict. Cisneros has done this in many vignettes. It's always the end of the vignette, and there's sort of a cliffhanger or some kind of shocking ending. And then we never hear about the story again. So the main story is this kind older man comes in. Seems like, maybe in his 50s, and she's just like this young girl. And he seems very comforting to her because she's been nervous all day about not knowing where to eat her lunch and not having anyone to talk to. And she starts trusting him because she says he has kind eyes. Now, obviously, that right away tells you she's pretty naive because we should realize as the audience that you can't trust people by their eyes, that's a very childish view if you think they're safe just by the way they look. She's not known him at all, but she's automatically trusting him, which again shows her childlike state. So the man lies to her. And if you didn't pick up on that, it wasn't his birthday. So again, he says it's his birthday and asks for a birthday kiss. Now, right then, you should be thinking Bum Man, because there's supposed to be a connection between these two characters. Because Bum Man asked for a kiss. And he said, if I give you $1, will you give me a kiss, little girl? And Rachel was looking for $1. So again, we had that already in another vignette where a character was wanting a kiss and they escaped from that situation because, again, they pulled Rachel away and they were able to make sure that they ran all the way back and took the shoes off and hid them. Now, in this vignette, it doesn't work out quite as well. She actually doesn't get away. And so we're beginning to see that her progression into the adult world is now even more dangerous than it was before. That danger is actually touching her now, when before it did not. She got out of the crashed car before. She got away from Bum Man. This time she did not get away. So you should be able to notice the progression that she's getting closer and closer to bad things at this point. So at this point, the man says he wants a kiss, and she's thinking like a peck on his cheek because he's a grandfather figure. But she's known him for 5 minutes, so this is not a good decision. But of course, because she's naive and too trusting, she leans in to kiss him on the cheek, but he grabs her face, and the book ends by saying he grabs my face with both hands and kisses me hard on the mouth and doesn't let me go. And so obviously it seems very aggressive. And at that point, the whole tone changes from he's a grandfather figure to he's a predator. And we get this comparison that he is very much like a Bum Man character where he was out to hurt her. So the book never mentions this job again. We don't know. Did she go home and tell her parents? Did she quit? Did she go back? We don't have any of that information. But again, the two biggest things that are important is, first of all, appearances and reality are often different. And that's, again, a literary theme that's shown in many texts that we read, as well as most Shakespeare plays. The appearance was that this Chinese gentleman, this older man, was kind. The reality was he was a predator. And so, again, that is something that she learned too late because she was too trusting and didn't really see the danger of the adult world. Again, secondly, another motif that's really important is the child world versus the adult world. We still see Esperanza juggling both, that she wants to be in the adult world by getting this job, lying about her age, dressing older. The reality is she's not ready to handle the risks that come with it because she's too naive. And in this case, it actually does impact her because he actually did kiss her against her will. Now, again, this might seem like, how could this even happen? This is like, kind of an over-the-top story. Wouldn't have anybody have noticed? And again, we don't know all the details about it, but I will say from personal experience, I worked at the Waffle House when I was in high school, and no one talked back then, which is about the same time period as this. This book was 1984, and I worked at the Waffle House in 1985. And so no one talked to people about things like sexual harassment, which are now talked about in schools and between students and with teachers and training in any kind of job. And when I was at the Waffle House, another teenage boy who was a couple years older than me, who was the owner's son of that franchise, followed me into a walk-in refrigerator and tried to force himself on me and kiss me. I didn't like him. We never talked. We were not dating. And we were alone in a soundproof walk-in refrigerator in the back of the store. And yes, there were other, customers and people who worked there, but they weren't in the actual refrigerator, so nobody could hear anything. And I had to actually hit him and push him away and run out. Now, nothing ever happened after that, and I got away, but it scared me. And so I had an experience like Esperanza, and that was my second job because remember, I got fired from the fudge factory. So Waffle House was actually job number 2. But the Waffle House was rough, and I had to work with some people that, were, using illegal substances or coming to work intoxicated. I had to deal with people and customers who were very handsy, and they try to grab you and touch you and say inappropriate things to you as a waitress. And it was really a world I was not ready for when I was 16. Again, I was thrust into that world to get money for college. And I was thrust into that world because I had very few other job options at that point because of my fudge factory fiasco. But I also can relate to Esperanza, that it's really easy to be too trusting, and then all of a sudden you're in over your head. And again, she got away. I got away. But again, it's a real life scenario. Sometimes the adult world comes with risks, and you have to be on guard against them because not everybody has good intentions. So that was the end of the chapter about the first job. Now, moving on to Papa Who Wakes Up Tired in the Dark on page 56 to 57 is a really short vignette. And of course, the main character is her father. And we've only really seen him earlier in the book when it was mentioned in Hares. And all it really said on page 6 was that my papa's hair is like a broom all up in the air. And then most of that vignette focused on her mother. If you remember, my mama who smells like bread. And she was the comforting one in the family that Esperanza felt like she related to the most. Now we get a whole vignette on Papa, and it gives us a little bit more insights into his character and to how she does love her father, how he is a figure that's important in the home, but yet he's also gone from the home a lot because he has to work long hours to provide for them. So we're going to go ahead and read it. It's really short. It's about a page and a half. So turn to page 56 to 57 if you want to follow along. Papa who wakes up tired in the dark. Your abuelito is dead, Papa says early one morning in my room. Está muerto. And then, as if he had just heard the news himself, crumples like a coat and cries. My brave Papa cries. I have never seen Papa cry and don't know what to do. I know he will have to go away, that he will have to take a plane to Mexico, and all the uncles and aunts will be there, and they will all have black and white photos taken in front of the tomb with flowers shaped like spears in a white vase, because this is how they send away the dead in that country. Because I am the oldest, my father has told me first, and now it is my turn to tell the others. I will have to explain why we can't play. I will have to tell them to be quiet today. My papa, his thick hands and thick shoes, who wakes up tired in the dark, who combs his hair with water and drinks his coffee, is gone before we wake. Today is sitting on my bed. And I think if my own papa died, what would I do? So I hold Papa in my arms. I hold and hold and hold him. Okay, so that's all. And again, there's really just one plot thing that occurred, and that is that her grandfather has died. So we have the Spanish word abuelito, and that means grandfather. And because her own father is giving her the news and says his father has died, it would be her dad's dad, and he's back in Mexico. So if you remember, I mentioned her father is an immigrant family to Chicago, but the rest of her extended family is still back in Mexico. And her father has just gotten this news, apparently, and because of money, most likely, he's going to have to travel back, it says, by himself to there. It says he will have to take a plane to Mexico. It doesn't say they will all take a plane to Mexico. Most likely, the whole family couldn't afford to travel. So the father's going back by himself to bury his dad. So there's several things that we see about the dad's description in this vignette that tells us a lot more about him. First of all, it says he seems to be a very hard worker. For example, on page 57, it says he wakes up tired in the dark, and that he is often gone before we wake. So we get the idea that he works really long hours to support the family. We also get the inference that he probably is a physical laborer. And later in another chapter, we find out he works like as a gardener or a landscaper. That's mentioned later. But right now we get some hints that it is maybe not an office job, because it says, my papa, his thick hands and thick shoes on page 57. And thick hands might be calluses that would be on your palms from someone who works outside. And thick shoes indicates maybe like steel-toed boots or some sort of like boot protective wear rather than like dress suit shoes. So he dresses as if he's going to work in a laboring job. Now, the main point in this chapter is to also show that progression from child to adult world, but in a different way than first job. In this chapter, we begin to see that Esperanza, because she's the oldest, is now being dealt this really hard information, and she's the first child to be told. And she says on page 56, because I'm the oldest, my father has told me first. Now it is my turn to tell the others. That means her brothers, Carlos and Kiki, and her sister, Nenny. I will have to explain why we can't play. I will have to tell them to be quiet today. So we can see that because she's the oldest and dealing with this harsh concept of death, get out of the way here, we get the idea that she is having to move away from the innocence of the child world. The child world would protect kids from death. They would use euphemisms and they would say, oh, he's gone to a better place, or he's going on a journey, like we saw with Helen Keller in the story about Annie Sullivan and her brother and what the doctor said to her. Because she's the oldest, she's actually told the truth. And she's also expected to not only understand it, but then to pass it on and to handle telling the other kids. So we can see that she isn't protected and that she's having to move into a more adult role by having to deal with death. Additionally, the other thing that's important in this chapter is you begin to see she turns into the caregiver. And there's this juxtaposition, which is like, remember, juxtaposition's opposite. So there's this juxtaposition where usually the parent cares for the child and nurtures them. But in this case, she has to nurture the parent. And so we see a role reversal. So instead of her father holding her, she's holding her father. And at the end of the chapter, it says, I hold my papa in my arms. I hold and hold and hold him. And we have that polysyndeton there with and hold and hold. And that repetition seems to indicate that it goes on for a long time, that he doesn't just give her a quick hug, but that maybe he's just devastated and she just really has to console him for a longer period of time and hold and hold and hold. So again, because she's comforting the parent, she's stepping into that role of being older. And that also shows that she's having to leave the child world for the adult world and the realities of those hard times. So that was the end of that vignette. Now, remember, if you have questions about any of these, you can post them on the comments on our homepage in Google Classroom below the date of these assignments, and just post the question. Other students, I've changed the settings so students can respond to each other as well as you can ask questions to me. So if you see somebody else's comment and you want to address it, feel free to. And then when I see them there, I'll also add comments or answers to any of your questions if you're unsure what something means. Okay, Born Bad is our last vignette for today. Page 58 to 59. And tomorrow we'll be working on ACT Aspire essay again and alternating back to that. And you'll be doing one full-time 40-minute essay, and that one will probably be graded. The last one was just for me to just to check in and see how you're doing for practice and to give you attendance credit. But again, after we get back from spring break, we'll continue with House on Mango Street, since we're a little more than halfway done now. We're about 2/3 of the way through the book. Okay, so Born Bad is a longer vignette, and it's a little more complicated. It's a little more abstract. It references a new idea of superstition that we've only seen really one other time, which was in the great-grandmother Esperanza in My Name at the beginning, where it said that she was unlucky and born in the Chinese year of the horse, which was unlucky if you were born female. Other than that, we haven't seen a lot of superstition, but now we are. And there's going to be more vignettes that come up, including one right after this about Elenita, Cards, Palm, and Water, that's about a psychic. So we're going to start seeing this idea that in her Hispanic culture and in her neighborhood, there tends to be a belief in things like reading palms, suspicions, cracking an egg on your head, and this will protect you from the evil eye. And there's some sort of superstitious beliefs in her culture about being cursed. So in this chapter, she starts off with a pretty forceful sentence saying, most likely I will go to hell, and most likely I deserve to be there. So initially, of course, the structure is you wondering what in the world is going on. Why does she think that she's going to be treated like that? Who told her that? So it grabs your attention as a hook. So we're going to find out the whole story. But basically, she feels that when she was playing a game with Rachel and Lucy, she was making fun of her Aunt Lupe, and she was mocking her in a game of charades. Her aunt had been very sick for a long time, and it happened that the one day they played charades and that she was acting out and kind of making fun of her sickly movements and motions and reenacting her and mocking her, she died that day. And she believes she may have caused it because it happened on the same day. And so she feels like she'll go to hell and be cursed because of her Catholic faith for having been disrespectful. So at the end of the chapter where it says, then she died and we began to dream the dreams, it tends to think maybe she's having nightmares or something like that, due to feeling that she caused her aunt's death because she'd been sick for so long, but just happened to finally die the day that Esperanza made fun of her. And Esperanza, as a child, believes it's connected. So let's go ahead and read the vignette, and then we'll go through a lot of symbolism. Be looking for important colors and repetitions of words, and also the poem that Esperanza reads that she says she wrote is going to be important. Born Bad. Most likely I will go to hell, and most likely I deserve to be there. My mother says I was born on an evil day and prays for me. Lucy and Rachel pray too, for ourselves, for each other, because of what we did to Aunt Lupe. Her name was Guadalupe, and she was pretty like my mother, dark, good to look at, in her Joan Crawford dress and swimmer's legs, Aunt Lupe of the photographs. But I knew her sick from the disease that would not go, her legs bunched up under yellow sheets, the bones gone limp as worms, the yellow pillow, the yellow smell, the bottles and spoons. Her head thrown back like a thirsty lady, my aunt the swimmer. Hard to imagine her legs once strong, the bones hard and parting water, clean, sharp strokes, not bent and wrinkled like a baby, not drowning under the sticky yellow light. Second floor, rear apartment, the naked light bulb, the high ceilings, the light bulb always burning. I don't know who decides who deserves to go bad. There is no evil in her birth, no wicked curse. One day I believe she was swimming, and the next day she was sick. It might have been the day the gray photograph was taken. It might have been the day she was holding cousin Tachi and baby Frank. It might have been the moment she pointed to the camera for the kids to look and they wouldn't. Maybe the sky didn't look the day she fell down. Maybe God was busy. It could be true she didn't dive right one day and hurt her spine, or maybe the story that she fell very hard from a high step stool, like Tachi said, is true. But I think diseases have no eyes. They pick with a dizzy finger anyone, just anyone, like my aunt, who happened to be walking down the street one day in her Joan Crawford dress, in her funny felt hat with the black feather, cousin Tachi in one hand, baby Frank in the other. Sometimes you get used to the sick, and sometimes the sickness, if they're too long, gets to seem normal. That is how it was with her, and maybe this is why we chose her. It was a game, after all. It was a game we played every afternoon ever since that day one of us invented it. I can't remember who. I think it was me. You had to pick somebody. You had to think of someone everybody knew, someone you could imitate, and everybody else would have to guess who it was. It started out with famous people, Wonder Woman, the Beatles, Marilyn Monroe, and then somebody thought it'd be better if we changed the game a little bit, if we pretended we were Mr. Benny or his wife Blanca or Ruthie or anybody we knew. I don't know why we picked her. Maybe we were bored that day. Maybe we got tired. We liked my aunt. She listened to our stories. She always asked us to come back. Lucy, me, Rachel. I hated to go there alone, the 6 blocks to the dark apartment, second floor rear building where sunlight never came. And what did it matter? My aunt was blind by then. She never saw the dirty dishes in the sink. She couldn't see the ceilings dusty with flies, the ugly maroon walls, the bottles and sticky spoons. I can't forget the smell, like sticky capsules filled with jelly. My aunt, a little oyster, a little piece of meat on an open shell for us to look at. Hello? Hello? As if she'd fallen into a well. I took my library books to her house and I read her stories. I liked the water babies. She liked it too. I never knew how sick she was until that day I tried to show her one of the pictures in the book, a beautiful color picture of the water babies swimming in the sea. I held the book up to her face. I can't see it, she said. I'm blind. And then I was ashamed. She listened to every book, every poem I read her, and one day I read her one of my own and I came very close and whispered it into her pillow. I want to be like the waves on the sea, like the clouds in the wind, but I am me. One day I'll jump out of my skin. I'll shake the sky like 100 violins. That's very nice. That's very good, she said in her tired voice. You must remember to keep writing, Esperanza. You must keep writing. It will keep you free. And I said yes, but at the time I did not know what she meant. That day we played the game, we didn't know she was going to die. We pretended with our heads thrown back, our arms limp and useless, dangling like the dead. We laughed the way she laughed. We talked the way she talked, the way blind people talk without moving their head. We imitated the way you had to lift her head a little so she could drink water. She sucked it up slow out of the green tin cup. The water was warm and tasted like metal. Lucy laughed, Rachel too. We took turns being her. We screamed in the weak voice of a parrot for Tachi to come and wash those dishes. It was easy. We didn't know. She'd been dying for such a long time, we forgot. Maybe she was ashamed. Maybe she was embarrassed it took so many years. The kids who wanted to be kids instead of washing dishes and ironing their papa's shirts, and the husband who wanted a wife again. And then she died, my aunt who listened to my poems, and then we began to dream the dreams. Okay, so that one's a little heavier, obviously with someone dying and a lot of feelings about guilt. So let's go through a few of the notes. I do want to say at this point in the video, I'm going to have a question today on the Google form that you need to answer to show you've been watching the video, and it's going to be a code word, and the code word is elephant. So when there's a question about what is today's code word in the lecture, it is elephant, and do not tell anybody who has not watched the video. Thank you. Okay, so let's go back to, again, right here. How about right here, the charade games? I kind of already introduced that it was a game where we know that they were playing, like reenacting her, because it said on page 59, it was a game that all. You had to pick somebody and think of somebody you knew and imitate them, and everybody else would guess who it was. And they started with famous people and celebrities. They mentioned Wonder Woman, the Beatles, Marilyn Monroe, and eventually they changed to neighborhood people that everybody knew, and they eventually ended up with Aunt Lupe. Now, to them, they felt like it was a little bit more disrespectful to imitate someone who was dying, but they were laughing while they were doing it, which is why they feel so much guilt later. Now, you should have seen that the color yellow was used in this vignette a lot. And can you remember another vignette where yellow was mentioned? So be thinking. If we were in class right now, I'd call on you and give you a ticket. So yellow, do you know? Amelia, anybody? Eden, Stephanie, Cameron. Okay, yellow, the yellow Cadillac. So we had yellow again in that vignette about Louis, his cousin, and his other cousin. And in this vignette, we have it as well with all the illnesses and all the colors of the apartment. So again, there's some quotes I listed here for you. We had yellow sheets, yellow pillow, yellow smell, yellow light bulb. And again, if you look in your symbolism book, the blue one, it does say like yellow can also be disease. Can be a sickly color. It is also the color of urine. Yes, I know that's gross. So again, vomit and bodily fluids and things like that, it all seems like hospital-like, and that's the color also of yellow. So we have this kind of gross feeling in the apartment with naked light bulbs and sticky spoons and everything being yellow, that she's very, very sick. And Esperanza had said, I don't like being there alone. And so she would take Rachel and Lucy to go visit her aunt and read to her. Now, there's also a lot of symbolism in this vignette with water, which is interesting because water is usually a very positive connotation, and it is in this vignette as well. The first thing we get is the reference that Aunt Lupe used to be a swimmer. And it said, for example, on page 58, her head thrown back like a thirsty lady, my aunt the swimmer. And again, it talked about on page 59 that, again, maybe she had been cutting through with strong strokes through the water. And so she had once, maybe at one time, been an athlete, we don't know, or she'd really been a good swimmer. But now, because she's so weak, it seems like she's almost paralyzed and bedridden. So she's lost all of that strength. The book that Esperanza reads her is also based in water, and it's called Water Babies. And then even in the poem that she reads to her, she mentions waves on the sea, which is also water. So water typically means like the symbolism for rebirth or new life, which is interesting because Aunt Lupe is dying. So the water is not about Aunt Lupe, even though it describes her as the swimmer. The water is about Esperanza. And the water is about how Esperanza is going to have a new life or a new beginning by listening to the advice of her aunt. Now, this is the first time that any character has given Esperanza advice. Well, let me take that back. Marin gave her advice, but it was not very good advice. It was advice about how to get boys to notice you. And if you remember back with Marin, let me find that vignette, it said that Marin told her all sorts of useful things, like how Davy the baby's sister got pregnant, what cream is best for taking off mustache hair, and if you count the white flecks on your fingernails, you can find out how many boys are thinking of you. That was on page 27. So Marin gave her advice. Didn't seem like good advice. But now this is the first time someone has really counseled her about something that would really help her and give her a rebirth, and that is education in writing. Now, it appears that Esperanza writes poetry. That's where she seems a little bit autobiographical, that she might be representing our author, Sandra Cisneros, who also is a poet, because she did say she wrote a lot of the book about her own life, but not all of it. So Aunt Lupe tells her when she reads her this poem, remember the poem is in italic, actually it's not in italics, but it's on page 60. I want to be like the waves on the sea, like the clouds in the wind, but I'm me. One day I'll jump out of my skin, I'll shake the sky with 100 violins. And so she reads that to her aunt, and her aunt's reaction can be her beginning of her rebirth. So her aunt tells her, you must keep writing, it will keep you free. And that's the advice Esperanza doesn't understand because she's still not in the adult world yet. So she just kind of nods her head and says, yeah, thanks. But she says, I don't know what she meant. By the end of the book, Esperanza will come back and she'll understand what this means. So it's really important to keep this in mind, that she's been told what her destiny is, but she just doesn't understand it yet. And so Aunt Lupe is a good role model. She dies, and we don't obviously hear from her again, but she begins to plant that seed that writing and education is what will get Esperanza that freedom she's desiring. And the poem that she wrote mentions waves and clouds and music. And we talked about music like the music box, all representing the idea of freedom. Because waves is like moving water, clouds are in the sky, and then the music, like we talked about with the music box, with the violins, will all provide that beauty and that escape for her. And so she doesn't understand her aunt's advice, but it's the best advice she's been given so far about her future. Now, again, the last thing that's important is there is an allusion that Lupe is actually representing a mythological character. Lupe is blind, and we know that because it said she was blind by then, as one of the quotes. And Aunt Lupe tells the future, and she gives her a prophecy saying, you must always write, it will keep you free. And she seems very wise and prophetic. In mythology, there's a character often called an oracle who would often be able to tell people wisdom or prophecies about what's going to happen, but they were never really understood by the person, and they were often blind. So there was this sort of mythological irony that they were physically blind, but that they could see bigger things, like psychics. So Aunt Lupe is kind of like an oracle in this chapter, and she's telling Esperanza her destiny, but Esperanza, because she's still in the child world, doesn't understand it yet. So this chapter is pretty hard. But it's one of my favorites. So again, if you have questions, post them. And what you need to do now, there's not any big new assignment today other than taking the Google Form quiz. So you might want to go back through the video again, or actually reread the chapters some more, or read through the notes, which I also have posted in Google Classroom, that are not in the video. So you can just read the bulleted points that are, again, over here, and then take the Google quiz and the Google Form quiz and just answer the questions. And then tomorrow we'll work on ACT Aspire essay writing one more time, and then spring break. Okay, so let me know if you need any help. Have a good night. Bye.